Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies to keep teams human-centered, drive innovation, and empower you with the tools and insights needed to help your team excel and thrive in today's changing world. Your host is Dane Groeneveld, a seasoned expert with over 20 years of experience enhancing team dynamics and innovation. On this episode, Dane sits down with Nogol Madani, founder and CEO of Glee Factor and a lecturer at the McGill Executive Institute. Nogol shares her journey from engineering to helping organizations build future-ready teams that can thrive in the age of AI. Together, they explore how psychological safety acts as a cultural infrastructure, the foundation that enables trust, collaboration, and innovation. She explains why small intentional experiments help teams build confidence during times of change and how leaders can model curiosity and vulnerability to create environments where people feel safe sharing ideas and taking risks. This conversation is a practical guide for anyone looking to lead their team with more humanity, especially as technology continues to reshape how we work. So, teamwork makes the dream work, and we're here to inspire your next collaborative breakthrough. Gather your team or put on your headphones, and let's dive in together.
Welcome to the Future of Teamwork podcast. My name's Dane Groeneveld, CEO of the Huddle 3 Group, and today I'm joined by Nogol Madani. Nogol is the founder and CEO of Glee Factor. She teaches at the McGill Executive Institute and also runs some great LinkedIn Live conversations with Human Mode series. So we've been having a great pre-show catch-up, and I'm delighted to have you here today. Nogol, welcome.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting that we've realized that we just share some different experiences from different part of the world, but it's quite similar. So that's already amazing. Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about maybe going back to some of those early experiences.
Yeah.
What brought you to be doing this really impactful work around, future-proofing your team for the age of AI?
Yes. So, I'm an engineer by training. I moved to Montreal from Iran in 2007 as an international student. I finished my master's and I was hired by a large corporation and in mining and construction. And I worked as an engineer for 5 years in general in two different organizations, one extremely large and one extremely small. But the challenges were quite similar, as we just discussed about it, as a woman of color, female engineer in male-dominated industry. I felt that teams were just stifling potentials, or leaders were stifling potentials. I knew that I could do more, and it was not happening. And I knew that it was something outside of me. It was just the environment. So I became quite interested in the concept of culture, work culture, and all of that in 2015, even future of work. I remember back then I was reading articles about 2030, that's going to be the tipping point. And I decided to basically quit my engineering career and starting the project of Glee Factor with a very simple question, what is at the core of high performing, inclusive, future ready teams? What are we missing? And with that project and with that question, I started the project of Glee Factor in 2017, and I turned it into business in 2021.
Very cool. So what is it? How do you go about future-proofing teams?
So, yeah, that's actually a great question. So I did lots of, I have personal experience, Dane, and I was reading a lot. And I was always somewhere between inclusion, social wellness. I knew that it was not a personal thing, but it was a team level thing, that I knew. But in 2018, I thought that, okay, I need academic collaboration. I need to actually dig deeper into this science. And obviously I don't have those credentials. So I wrote to all the professors, PhD students in Montreal, in management, organizational behavior, human systems, all of that. And I said, I need help. This is my question. I've been interviewing 200 people already. I've done some pilot projects. I've done some conferences, but I think that I just need some research. And one of them answered. She's now a professor at Alberta University. And we worked together for a few months. And she came back with an answer, and the answer was psychological safety. And I've obviously read many books that use the term psychological safety and refer to the work of Amy Edmondson, professor at Harvard University, who's done, just put like the concept on the map. But at the same time, I didn't know deep down what it was. Like it was just a very surface level. So I really went, and it was before like Amy Edmondson Fearless Organization like book came out. So I went through like the articles that she basically literally like, the papers that she published back in 1999, and I read them and I said, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what I missed. And I think this is what is going to be the umbrella where inclusion, social wellness, so many things that I thought were the answers will fall under.
And it's interesting because I think the psychological safety is known or understood to different levels in different types of businesses, cultures, communities. But even when you know it well, it's hard to execute. So like just knowing it's not enough. It's kind of like, hey, I know that if I sleep well, I'll be healthier, but that doesn't mean you sleep well, right?
Exactly. And I will always give this example of like wellness industry. That everyone knows they have to eat healthy and everyone knows that they have to do exercise, but it's a $1 billion industry because it is hard to do it. Like knowing it is
Super
not the
hard.
same as doing it. So,
Yeah.
and I think the one thing that I find challenging, first of all, the term is a bit confusing for people. And, even people like everyone admits that it's not necessarily the best term because so many people connected to safety as a whole or physical safety or health and safety. Some people connected to no, we don't have a harassment in the workplace. It's a very safe environment where it's not. So I think the word is a bit confusing. And I totally agree with you. Even research shows that 40% of leaders, even today, after 6 years of this word being quite popular, becoming like, quite popular in the business world, only 45% of leaders around the world know what it means and why it's important. And only 26% of them actually implement it. So
Yeah,
you see
that's
that exactly like the knowledge, there's a knowledge gap, but there's also a gap between knowledge and execution and implementation.
absolutely. We were talking pre-show about sort of how care and curiosity show up in constructing psychological safety. I had a guest on recently that said, your people will not care what you know until they know that you care about them and the work that they're doing. I thought that was really cool. A friend of mine, Andre, said that should be a t-shirt, right? That would help leaders, the 26% of people are acting, but the other 74% would probably at least be able to take a step in the right direction with that kind of mindset.
I totally agree with you. And I think that the definition also, you mentioned care and curiosity, and we're going to get there, but like, the definition of psychological safety for so many people is still quite wrong. Like they think that psychological safety is hampering people. It's like creating a comfortable environment. Whereas this is not the case at all. Like, I mean, if you do have low standards, like performance standards, definitely that's going to be the case. You're just creating a very comfortable environment. No one's going to do anything and he's going to be challenged. But if you do have a high performance standard, merging that with psychological safety, that's where you're going to have learning and performance. Because psychological safety at the core, it means that you can take interpersonal risks. And what are those risks? It means that you can ask for help, you can share your idea, you can voice your like unpopular opinion, you can basically like share your mistake, you can bring discussions. So we see that this is at the core of collaboration and communication and innovation. So it is extremely key for people to have it, for leaders to actually somehow cultivate that and promote that. But because the majority of time we connect psychological safety to more comfort, not necessarily like, performance and learning in a non-judgmental environment with accountability, we don't see actually the value. So that's the big challenge. And then the bigger challenge, like, for us, for the longest time, I've worked on the concept of psychological safety as a foundation for performance and, learning. But then what happened in the last few years when you just mentioned, our tagline is that I was curious to see what's the role of psychological safety in the age of AI. And then you see that all the teams are going through transformation and all the teams will going to get to the next era of work is going to be very different. And
Yes.
any transformation, it comes with uncertainty, challenges, problems, like doubts around integration. And psychological
Yeah.
safety is what will help you go through change and transformation. And then talking about future of work, where you want to tap into the human potential so that they can work with AI partners, then again, you need that. So I just think that it's not just a nice to have. I mean, it was never, I think, a nice to have thing, but it's not even something that we can miss it now as leaders anymore. Like it is a cultural infrastructure that we need for the future of
Yeah.
work, I believe.
And I love cultural infrastructure because to me, having worked on a lot of projects that build and maintain infrastructure over the years, it's very tangible. It's there. It's critical. It's not, like you say, it's not a nice to have. It's not something that you do or you only need periodically. It's something you drive to work on every day. It's something that helps keep everything moving. So that's a very cool way to frame it.
No, I totally agree. And I think that people now are talking a lot about technological infrastructure for the age of AI, like how can we build our technologies around it so that we can get ready. And for me, the my mission is to constantly bring this awareness that besides that, totally you have to do that, but besides that, you also have to focus on the cultural side of things.
That's cool. You used a word in there, Nogol, on judgment. So I like your explanation of psychological safety as, being able to take into personal risk. But often judgment's something that shows up so much in teams, particularly as you touched on pre-show that, we've trained humans to work like machines in so many businesses and functions now. So judgment is kind of the shining light that's looking down on our work so often.
Yes, I totally agree with you. One of the exercises that we do with teams and with leaders is that we ask them what kills psychological safety. Like what kills team performance? Like what really blocks you from just contributing basically in your during your interactions? And judgment, obviously, judgment, fear of shame. We are a social species. We want to be perceived smart. We don't want to be looked as we're not competent. So that's why we call them interpersonal risk, because they are somehow putting us on a spotlight. And if we fail to create that environment of free of judgment or like shame or failure, there's a very high chance that people won't contribute. And and when we ask this question from our like participants, the things that the judgment comes in different things. Like sometimes it comes with fast no's. Sometimes in the meetings, they said this is not part of the agenda. Let's take this offline. It's like this is a great idea, but not following up. Like that killer can be in different ways. It could be in our nonverbal language, it could be our normal languages, it could be in the conditions. But one thing that I think it's quite eye-opening for everyone is that we all do things that will kill that vibe for people to.
Every day.
Yeah, because when you
Yeah.
ask people what kills psychological safety, they think, oh my goodness. Again, they go very high level, which just said, no, it's not. It's exactly those small moments that you either build that trust or you just like kill it.
Yeah, we were working with an executive recently who was very wonderful, very caring, but did not like conflict. And so what was happening is the executive was pulling their team in and asking everyone for their opinions, ideas, what's going right, what's going wrong, and then going away. And rather than encouraging a couple of people to have a conversation about maybe a difference of opinion on how to solve a problem, he would come back later on and just solve the problem in the way that he thought was best and not explain to anyone, how their information supported that decision or why he didn't support their position. And so while in his mind, he was, making sure that his team weren't getting into fights and he was doing what he thought was best for the team, he was actually dragging the team through a lot of questioning and a lot of, internal judgments in the space that was kind of left as a vacuum. And it's fascinating how those little things can kind of just pop up and then expand
Yes.
in teams.
And you see that a lot. You see, I mean, obviously we see like teams that they have high standard, like performance standards with low psychological safety, that's just an anxiety zone, like constantly, unfortunately. But at the same time, we see a lot of cultures that they're great people, they're connected, but they cannot disagree. They cannot. So therefore, instead of talking about what's not working within interactions, these things become gossip. People like talk behind each other's back. Like
Yeah.
it's
It's
just
a lot of wasted energy.
it's just a lot of wasted energy just because they don't have the tools or the language or the mindset to disagree with each other in a respectful, constructive manner. And I think that, and it happens a lot, exactly to your point, with caring leaders, with leaders who want to take care of teams, want to make sure that everything is good, but we're not doing a favor because you need those like healthy conversations so that a good decision will come out of it. And one thing we talk a lot, because leaders then say we're not going to have time to hear everything, or we cannot move forward with people sharing ideas. And the answer is just that this is not the outcome. Like, the outcome is not that if I share this idea, I want my idea to be the one selected. The idea is that we hear people, we actually tap into curiosity, we ask questions that are rooted in invitation to participation, and then we just respond proactively to that and say that, you know what, for this and this and this is the path forward.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. But again, it's just not happen. It doesn't happen that often.
It isn't happening. And when you talk about that invite to participate or making the time and space, you said tools, language,
Yes.
and mindset. How do you and the team at Glee Factor kind of come in and start to create some of that opportunity for teams?
So, look, I love Amy Edmondson's work in the Fearless organization. She has like a structure that I find it quite like easy to follow. Just that you want to set a stage and set the tone, like what's good, what's not. Can we fail here or not? And it just somehow, I think, puts that responsibility on the leadership, how you model that safety. Then it's the question of inviting for participation. And finally, it's the like responding proactively. Some of the things that we say is exactly around like how you manage your interactions, how you design conversations. At the end of the day, I think, Dane, the majority of our work is around designing moments of connection with certain tools where people can challenge each other, can talk about something that is not working. And it's not a rocket science. The only thing that we do, which is extremely, I think, important, is that, first of all, we need to educate people on what are the important things, like why we want to promote psychological safety. That's just an education part with like certain small like actions for people to take, to actually practice and activate within their teams. But the next idea is really experimentation. Like, you need to experiment with the behaviors, with these skills and tools. And I can just share a few of them with you in a minute. And then once you have that, you co-develop these practices and rituals, and then you're ready to integrate. Like, I see that sometimes we as leaders, and I totally understand that we don't have time. So we just want a quick fix. Let's integrate. But if people don't see the impact of those behaviors into their everyday lives, it's really hard for that behavior to become a norm, a social norm within the team dynamic. So I think the idea of experimentation is extremely important. But what could be some of the ideas? Like some of them, again, as I said, like setting the tone. Like, we always, when leaders come to us and say that, you know what, people don't ask for help in our team, or they don't share mistakes. And I always say that, do you do that? Because if you don't do it, like, your team will never take more risk than you, and they will not be more vulnerable than you. So if this is the behavior that you want to promote, you're the one who has to be the role model of it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that like, how do we start our interactions? Like meetings, for example, I think that it's a good example of like a larger like team dynamic. It's interesting. We just finished a program with a team, and in the recap session, we discussed that, okay, like what is changing? And he said, you know what, for us, asking questions have been always considered as that you're incompetent, you're not listening well. Like it was just a bad behavior. Like you don't ask questions in meetings. You're just staying silent because you're supposed to know everything. Whereas
It's an information update.
exactly. And then post this experimentation that we've done with them, we said that, you know what, it's rooted in curiosity. If you share the correct language, it can be really invite people to share ideas and to learn more. And now they're saying that this is what we're doing. Like we see that people are asking more questions. Or for example, mindset check-ins, like check-ins at the beginning. We always tell people, come on, like give 5 minutes to just create that context for risk taking. Like just don't come in and like jump in and then again design for it. I think that one thing that for our work is extremely important is to design these moments. Like when you come and say, how was your weekend? How was
Yeah.
like how was the wedding? Like
You kill it.
you're killing it, and you're again excluding some people because some people didn't feel comfortable talking about anything or they didn't have anything fun for the weekend. Like what can I say? Like I just sat down and watched Netflix. Like I don't want to share that because I'm gonna look like a loser. Whereas if you say that, like what is one word that you're like, what's your emotional as you're entering this room? Like what is your weather status? Are you rainy? Are you sunny? Or like what if you were stationary, what would you be? If you were like a kitchen tool, what you would be? Like it's low key, it's fun. And research shows that when people talk at the beginning of meetings for a minute or two, there's a higher chance that they're going to share their ideas later on. So you see that they're just these small tweaks. Or for example, people like leaders tell us that no one shared their different opinions. And I said, okay, what's your question that you're asking in the meeting to invite these diverse ideas? And you know what? Does anyone have any different ideas that they want to share?
Yeah.
I said, how do you feel about this? I'm not going to share. I don't feel comfortable sharing with that question. This question is already very risky. Like you're just, whereas in fact, if you can say that, what is the perspective that we're missing here? Like what is
Yeah.
something that we haven't thought of? You see, it's just changing the language that is rooted in curiosity and participation. And there's no judgment to it. There's not just, oh, you have a different idea. So it's just these nuanced ideas that we see has a huge, huge impact on team dynamics and how people work together. And I think as we are getting into the future of work, where we need to work better together, like we need to actually just be more like building these human centered dynamics and cultures, and we really focus on that. Because then the question of judgment that you're asking is that if I don't feel safe sharing my idea, how can I evaluate an AI generated content or a product?
Fair. Yeah.
You know what I
That's a
mean?
big
Like,
question.
yeah, like how if I cannot trust my colleague, how can I trust a machine or AI partner with the work that it's doing? So I think these are the bigger questions that somehow really invite us to think about a bit differently about how we work.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that one. I like the way you pose that question there too, Nogol. Like, how can I trust an AI partner? How can I evaluate the AI's work? Because I think we're seeing some of the early signs in teams of people that just grab what ChatGPT does and send it in. And they're thinking it's safe to say this came from ChatGPT without offering their assessment or evaluation because they're afraid to give the evaluation. And so that actually creates, I think, more churn in the business because now everyone's throwing tons of information in and no one's really curating or sharing like how that makes them feel or what energy it creates. So I think
Totally agree.
it's really interesting.
And it's also this idea, I talked in the human mode with a leader, with a guest actually of ours like a few weeks ago. And I said, you know what? Like women, for example, or minorities already have a hard time sharing their ideas, sharing their analysis. Like how could they do that? Like with the AI generated tool, like you want to actually create your own AI for your technology, for your company, and it's totally fine. But that analytical thinking and that evaluation from humans is extremely needed to
Yeah.
help this AI partner self correct its work. But
Yeah.
if we don't have safety for people to communicate that, what are we missing here? Like then we are creating systems that they're again like rooted in biased like mindsets.
Hugely biased. Yeah.
So that
And even, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, even putting bias aside for a minute, if we all started leaning into AI in the same way and we didn't apply our human feelings, intuition, energies, then we would end up with these kind of monolithic ways of doing things or ways of experiencing things, which we know, like, humanity is so diverse. The way that we enjoy things, the times that we enjoy them, how we communicate with different people on different things, that we can't shift to a lowest common denominator. Like that would be sending us backwards in a big way.
I totally agree with you. And there's something interesting that I've been observing, and I wrote about it on LinkedIn, is that we had two guests during like the last, we just started. I just launched this on like at the end of June. So it's just like I think 8 or 9 like that we've done. These two, they had their PhDs in technology. So they've been like really deep down into the tech world. And both of them have a very human centered approach
Yeah.
to work. Like they see that, okay, AI is just a tool. We need the humans on top of it. We need to rescale and upskill so that we can manage it. At the end of the day, the emotional intelligence and how we work together, it's there. And it was for me very eye-opening to see that these people know technology upside down and they're just working with it and been working with it for the last 20 years. They have a very human vision and also a very like logic approach to what AI is and it's not.
And that's probably something that we could bring to more teams, is my guess. How have you seen when you've worked with either technologists or companies that are really trying to look at bringing this humanity forward?
Yes.
How do they tend to approach the integration of AI into their business tasks and functions that you've seen that's like, oh, wow, that's a best practice?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily work with people that they're just integrating AI like necessarily, but I see that there are some intentions around integrating AI to build more inclusive like teams. Like use AI as a project to see what are we missing and what are the gaps. And basically that AI partner becomes that safety net where we can actually discuss what's working and what's not. So, so again, just use it as like a confident HR person who's going to, or just like a manager who can
Yeah.
just work with you. But one thing that I see is that the leaders who are more focused on taking care of their people, building psychological safety, people working together, they're much more comfortable, as if they have their, because, again, we discussed this. Like, I think leaders are going through a very rough time. They need to perform and transform at the same time. They have their own doubts, they have their own uncertainties, but then they have the resistance from the team, from the management.
Shareholders.
It's just
Yeah.
everything. But then you see that the teams that they have that tight dynamics and cultures, as if you just say, you know what, we're doing this together, we're gonna make it happen. Like you see that they have more confidence stepping into this unknown experimentation. The other thing that I think is extremely important, you know, everyone that I'm talking to talks about this idea that building AI into our organizations. I mean, some of us might not use it or anything, but in general, going through this technological transformation needs a lot of experimentation, needs a lot of try and error. And I think that the leaders and teams who are more already have that again infrastructure for making mistakes. They have a procedure in place that, this is what we're going to experiment. They allow that space again, they feel much more confident. They say, you know what, this is what we can do and learn from it and adjust as we're going.
It's interesting. Dr. Andre Martin, he's a good friend of the podcast and tennis partner of mine. He talks about in his new book, which he's been researching on collective confidence, the importance of low stakes moments. So if you've got a team, and I like the way you tie it into experimentation, if you've got a team that is being asked to perform and transform at the same time, don't ask them to do both in a big way all of a sudden, because that's just going to create that anxiety trap you touched on earlier. Give them something that's fun, playful, small, adjacent to the core business, and let them go out and start working on that, because that starts to build the collective confidence. And over time, more experiments create more awareness of, hey, Nogol's really good at this, I'm good at that, and Jenny over here is contributing this perspective. And you all start to learn how to lean on each other to make that shift.
I love it. I mean, I haven't read his book, but this is exactly it. I think that, more than anything, we cannot see what's going to happen. Like, we're going to be in this uncertain moments for like a few years at least. But to your point, building that collective confidence through psychological safety, through care, through curiosity, through like designed moments of experimentation can just create that agility and adaptability as a team for us to just go through transformation. I love actually this analogy of collective confidence.
It's very cool. It's something we're going to be working on a lot, I think, over the weeks and years ahead. I think going back to your point at the top of the show about bringing more of the human forward, the human mode, as you call it, I think that's going to be one way to do it, and build that collective confidence, move away from the judgment, and it drives that psychological safety. But it also means that we're experimenting at the fringes, and so that might not just incrementally improve or give us a step change improvement in our core business. It might open our eyes to something that we hadn't even thought of before, which is more innovative and disruptive, which is cool too.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And it's interesting because I'm part of different communities of entrepreneurs or like female leaders that they're already thinking about doing things differently and experimenting things differently. And one thing that we say, again, we see through these programs within teams is that, again, giving them tool, like, how do you want to talk about that issue or challenge? How do you want to talk about mistake? Like, how can we avoid blame? What's going to be the language? What could be that framework? It could be something very easy, but all of that can, again, just build that rituals through which we can just, build that collective confidence and just like promote psychological safety. So I think it's really in those small but consistent actions that we can commit to as leaders and as teams to just slowly change that. But I think the important work is in mindset shift. Like when we talk about human skills, like it used to, I mean, they still call it soft skills. It's soft because it's feminine, so it's not important. It's condescending already. It's like obviously not prioritized. So I think that we need to have that shift that it's actually the machines are going to do the majority of hard work. We need definitely that fluency to be able to evaluate and to analyze and to work with those AI partners. But the core of the work will be actually our analytical thinking, influence, and all of that. So I think that mindset shift is something that we all need to go through so that we can just prioritize this work.
Yeah, I think feelings become very important in there too, which intrigues me, because if you think about the world moving to big data, hey, we know a lot more about something before we venture into it. We lose that human instinct and that human feeling that might create something that wasn't even required or necessary, but it just sparked something new and exciting. And so I'm intrigued going into this next chapter of the AI era, or the age of AI, as you called it, to see like, well, how is innovation and novelty going to play through? because life could become a little bit too mundane and planned out
Yes.
otherwise.
But Dane, actually, something that you're saying is very interesting. I never thought about it. So you think that the idea that there's that much uncertainty and unknown territory, do you think that it's going to bring excitement, but or also like also a bit of fear, or how do you see that will play for people and for
I think it
listeners?
goes both ways, and that's why I like your call to action on mindset, because if you're more pessimistic in your mindset about AI and robots taking over the earth, you might make very different decisions. You know, if you're a greedy person, you might say, "Hey, I'm getting on this train and I'm going to build AI that's really going to generate a lot of money, but takes agency away from people." If you're a very you know human centered person and you think, but you're pessimistic, you might be like, hey, I'm taking my family and I'm going to go and live in the hills and get away from cities and IT. But on the flip side of that, the optimists out there that say, hey, AI, I've had a few guests on the show that say AI is going to allow Nogol or Dane or a friend to be sitting out on the beach having a picnic with their family and having an idea that creates something new for people, then maybe the more we open our minds to that, we're going to be bringing new
Yes,
ideas to not
exactly.
only the services and products we build, but the way that we work.
Yeah. And, that's exactly it. I also talk to people that they say that, yes, a part of AI might be that there's going to be organizations that want to just like cut people and just save money. But at the same time, there are going to be like lots of creative people and entrepreneurs that they will actually use AI. They can do like amazing stuff, very impactful things, like really using business for good because of the AI. So so I think again, it really comes back to us that what is that future that we want to
Yeah.
create, and what is that future of teams that we want to create, so that we start planting the seeds, building the infrastructure, and start practicing. And it's interesting that I had a guest and I asked her, she has actually a very like very different like community of female like leaders, and they're already doing things differently, and I'm part of that community. And I said, how you do that? It's just through practice, because
Yep.
we just have to do lots of unlearning. So that unlearning and that relearning, with a bit of like psychological safety, I think that can go a very, very long way for us, for our teams, and we're just getting ready for what's ahead of us.
And unlearning's cool. It kind of goes back to that design factor when you said mindset check-ins. We had a guest that once came on and said, when you're getting the team together to solve a problem, rather than going straight into brainstorming on like what is the problem and how are we going to solve it, you can start with something creative like, hey, everyone take 5 minutes and draw a picture of a crazy way that we could solve that for this. And so if people are invited to do the crazy first, that
Exactly.
how does that, number one, lower the stakes? And hey, this isn't actually meant to work, it's meant to be fun, and we're meant to be in a mode of ideation. And then two, how might that ideation actually shape your hard thinking on the problem set and the opportunity to solve it? Because you're like, well, Nogol said this, but while that seemed crazy at the time, maybe it's absolutely what we need. Maybe we do need fifth graders to be part of a focus group and tell us how they see the world differently, because they are going to be our customers in 15 years time.
That's exactly, and that's exactly, exactly to your point, like designing moments that are low risk, low stake is exactly the definition of psychological safety. So that people can take risk. And to your point, when we're talking about problems, like one of the things that we sometimes like suggest is that how would your alter ego solve this? Like if your alter
Yeah.
ego is like, I don't know, Rosa Parks or Elvis Presley, like how would they tackle this? How are you going to talk
Yeah.
about it? So again, just creating context in which risk taking is not necessarily comfortable, because I never think that it's going to be comfortable, but it's going to be feasible and doable so that you'll get contribution. That's the idea.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny you mentioned alter ego. I like play and dress up and all of that stuff for just changing dynamics in the workplace. And we were talking to the team the other day. We were like, let's have a meeting in October and let's start the meeting where everyone actually has to come wearing, the costume of their alter ego, and they kind of have to not be themselves for the morning, because it would be fascinating to see like what kind of what kind of ideas and what
Ideas.
type of problems present themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Just the simple question that we asked, that what would you be if you're a stationary?
Mm.
Like, it's just already
Hmm.
sparking so much, because people love to express themselves. If it's
Yeah.
either through a custom, if it's through like, okay, I'm a highlighter because I'm the one that, just showcase all the good ideas. Oh no, I'm the stapler because I'm the one who's just connecting all the departments. Or I'm just, the journal. Like, I'm the
Yeah.
white paper. People come to me to share ideas. And you get to see that this is exactly like the environment that you want, that people just feel like comfortable contributing, sharing, and then definitely good stuff will come out of it. But again, it just needs to be prioritized.
Yeah. 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 And it can't be all of the time. I think you're right.
No,
The one of my big takeaways is that intentionality of design that you shared there. It's at it's at this particular cadence or at this particular meeting or junction.
exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what we do also at Glee Factor. Say, you know what, this is what we experimented. If we want to
Yeah.
turn this into a ritual, what is the like logical that makes sense to you? What is the authentic like frequency that is just not too much, but also at the same time it will have impact? Like, what do you feel like? And commit to
Yeah.
that. And it's always the idea, again, it's always the idea of a small action, but doing it consistently. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about behavioral change, we're talking
Yeah.
about mindset shift, we're talking about individual and collective, like habits. So we just need to give it time and be aware of it and constantly focusing on it.
Yeah. And I like that one, going back to wellness, which you touched on appropriately earlier as an analogy, like the 1% better every day helps. Like, don't go out and try and do 3 big workouts a quarter. Like, if you can do
Exactly.
something small every day or every week, how is that going to incrementally lift that
Exactly.
psychological safety and lower the stakes at key moments?
Exactly. And you see that it works. Something that is at the beginning, you have to be intentional with it. You have to design for it. If it's a mindset check-in, if it's a question with the
Yeah.
curiosity, curious language, after 6 months, this is the nature of your business. This is you. This is the second nature of
Yes.
your team dynamic. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's done. It's just a question of constantly sustaining it and be on top of it. But it doesn't need that much effort anymore, you know?
Yeah,
Again, just
I love that.
wellness. Yeah.
Super cool. Well, it's been a great conversation. We've touched on some great points. I particularly like the definition of psychological safety as that ability to take into personal risk. I love your use of the word cultural infrastructure because it is hard, it is tangible, and like you've just suggested there, if it's something that is a way that people get to work at key moments or show up at work at key moments, not in every task, I think that's going to really lift that human potential. I thought the anxiety zone that you touched on too, Nogol, was cool, where you were like, hey, this is a high performance culture with low psychological safety, so everyone's just angst. I think we've all seen that at moments in teams or on projects. Some people, unfortunately, are living it every day. So it's good to be aware of it, particularly if you're willing to try some of these methods. And then as you moved into that power of experimentation, designing rituals, designing meetings, using check-ins, being a leader who's a good role model, who's happy to share their mistakes or ask for help. I think, like you said, they are the little actions that we can intentionally weave in every day to lift that team's ability to be future-proof, which is just super cool. So lots of good stuff. If any of our listeners want to reach out to you and learn more about Glee Factor or your experiences kind of operating in this realm, how do they best find you?
I mean, LinkedIn is a great place. I'm always there. They can join the Human Mode LinkedIn Lives every Wednesday. I have a guest
Yeah.
talking about like future of leadership, future of teams, and what's next, human and technology in the age of AI and what's next. And our website, definitely. And I'm, as you've seen probably, I love to talk. So if they want to chat with me, they can just go
That's
book a
awesome.
call and we can just like talk about these things. I think that we're at the point that we need to move forward a bit differently. So I'm just committed to like build a different world of work. And if anyone wants to be part of this, I'll be more than happy.
That's a great movement. I'm excited to journey alongside you on that too, Nogol. So thank
Awesome,
you for your
Dane.
time today.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much, Dane. This was great.
Thank you for joining us. Remember that by embracing vulnerability, trusting our intuition, and approaching challenges with compassion, we not only strengthen our teams, but also pave the way for a future where collaboration thrives. If you're hungry for more insights, strategies, and research on collaboration, head over to thefutureofteamwork.com. There, you can join our mailing list to stay updated with the latest episodes and get access to exclusive content tailored to make your team thrive. Together, we can build the future of teamwork. Until next time.